Hello and welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret, and today I am talking to Emily and Jason Morrow. Emily is a stay-at-home mom who created the social media channel Really Very Crunchy with her husband Jason in 2022. Since then, their social media has grown rapidly with over 3 million followers and more than, listen up, 2 billion views on their videos. They are also podcasters who host the Really Very Crunchy podcast on, yes, the Catalyst Media Network. Welcome, Emily and Jason.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
So let's start. I feel like this is going to be an educational podcast for me. When I think of a crunchy mom, I think of putting me in an opposite making machine and coming out with a crunchy mom. I am whatever I think of as crunchy. I think that's not me. I grew up in the suburbs of New York City. I eat a lot of high fructose corn syrup and McDonald's, and I don't know. I mean, I try not to use a lot of plastic, but what does it mean? What is crunchy if people are just meeting you for the first time today?
Yeah, well, let me say you look great.
Thank you.
The admittance of eating McDonald's is quite surprising to me.
I'm a fan. I don't know. A nugget every once in a while. I mean, I try not to do it, once a week, maybe, not that often.
So crunchy is sort of, it's a broad term, really, and it covers a wide spectrum of people. So the term has kind of transformed over the last, 50 years. But mostly it's about people who are interested in living a more natural and holistic lifestyle. So like getting back to the most basic, most natural, organic form of eating, using products, living. Yeah.
Natural, organic.
Natural.
We had a very crunchy friend growing up. She was our neighbor, and we would go over and make candles and eat granola. And I'd be like, wow,
Aww.
What charming weirdos. And then I would come home. But I did love it. I mean, I loved their home. It was very homey, but it definitely as a child seemed to me like a very different lifestyle. I think they didn't have a TV, which in the 70s when I was growing up was like, you might as well be from Mars. Like, what kind of people didn't have TVs? So
yeah.
How did you grow up in a crunchy household, or did you embrace crunchiness later in life?
Yeah, not at all. Not at all crunchy. Definitely spent most of my childhood watching television and eating zebra cakes.
Actually, have very similar upbringings in that regard.
Yeah.
Very mirror lives.
Lots of McDonald's.
Yeah.
But then I guess as I was approaching motherhood, I started questioning some of the decisions I was making and thinking about how do I want my kid to turn out? What do I want to, do as far as like how to feed him, what to put on his body, all those things, you just want to do your best as a first time mom.
And as I was approaching fatherhood, I was blissfully unaware that this transformation was happening, and I was thinking life is just going to be perfectly fine the way we've been doing it. It's great.
So I decided to take
awesome.
on a heavy load of anxiety because everything's going to ruin your child.
That's motherhood for you. Yes.
And here we are.
And I'm over here thinking, like, when am I going to give him his first chicken nuggets? Yeah.
You are a little bit more of the crunchy skeptic, I would say, or the crunchy adopter. You're kind of coming to the crunchy lifestyle through Emily. Is that a fair characterization?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And still we'll be doing things like he had a sore throat the other day and I'm like, here, hold this red light therapy box to your throat. Right. And he's like, this is not real, Emily.
But there's 2,000 studies about it.
There's over 2,000 studies on PubMed.
Are there really 2,000 studies? That's a lot of studies for red light therapy. I'm not sure I believe it. I will say,
total skeptic.
But this is how it typically happens. We have this, something's not right with me. You give your crunchy option. I do it, and it fixes it. Like I actually did the red light therapy on my throat.
And the next
day. I mean, this is anecdotal, and we can't actually say.
This is the 2001 study right here.
Yeah, that's right here. Yeah.
Play out.
He didn't have a sore throat.
I didn't.
I mean, who has a 12-hour sore throat? That's not a thing, right?
Okay.
Well, not when you're doing red light therapy, that's for sure.
No,
So
fix
I
that
come
right
into
up
this.
for you.
I come into this very slowly. A lot of this stuff, I'm pretty convinced on. I mean, it just makes sense to have healthier food, whatever. It's better for you. Everybody knows that,
Right.
but not everybody knows. Like, oh, you should just go touch grass barefoot, or you should, put this red light on your throat. And like, I don't know.
He won't take my tinctures though. Like
No.
he refuses the tinctures, the
My body's
fermented
got to
cod
go
liver
through it.
oil.
My
Mm.
body's just got to go through the whole thing on its own. It'll be stronger that way.
I feel like the word tincture is kind of triggering. Like it feels like tincture. It's going to smell bad. It's going to taste bad.
It's
And
50-50. Some
and
of
we're
them are
not
pretty good,
100%
and some
sure
of
it's
them are
gonna
the worst
work.
thing you've ever put in your mouth. So
Yeah.
I mean, I am sold on the tincture train. I will just be popping those little droppers in my kids' mouths constantly, and they open with such reluctancy.
they don't even drink
a
water
little baby
anymore. It's just
bird.
tinctures all the time. So,
They're an all tincture based life
yeah.
form. At this
Get your
point.
tincture bottle. Instead of your water bottle.
So, Emily, not having grown up crunchy, where did you learn this? It feels to me like a foreign language, even tincture. I have in my life, I think I can fairly say I have never encountered or used a tincture. Like, where
I'll
do
send
you
you one.
figure out? Thank you. I'll take it, I think.
It'll be glycerin based, so it'll have a sweetness about it. That's what I give my kids.
That
Yeah.
sounds good. That sounds good.
So there were a few different avenues. Like food is a different journey, than say changing out your products, that kind of thing. But for me, like really crossing into being a crunchy person, I gave this girl a gift of Miss Meyer's hand soap and a linen tea towel for her birthday. And she pulled it out and she said, "Oh, this is actually so toxic."
Mm.
And I was like, I have never heard anything referred to as toxic other than the Chernobyl incident. But I was just kind of confused. And so I was
Kind
like,
of a strange response to a gift. Not
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, I'm actually just walking out, taking the soap with me.
So I said,
have a
well,
receipt for that, and we will not be speaking again.
well, I said, maybe you could regift it, just trying to. And she
No.
said, I would never knowingly give someone toxins.
Well, what's the worst part about it is she's being so sweet about it. This is actually so toxic.
Like,
I actually want to slap you.
I just want to teach you.
Sorry.
Yeah, she's really one of the sweetest people ever. So it was kind of shocking to me that she was
Apparently not.
using this terminology. And so then there's this whole like crunchy mom issue that this know better, do better attitude. And a lot of people feel like it is their duty to teach everyone to know better.
Yes.
Which is
not
sort of
just
the-
in crunchy. See also the world. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just crunchy people who feel this need.
Yeah. So I think that's where I saw the comedy in it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
it's the whole
also-
basis of our account too. It's just like, okay, that's funny.
You can just live your life making your own choices and not worry about anybody else.
Really,
Like, that's okay.
That experience itself was really the basis of really very crunchy in a way. It's like, wow,
Well,
you take
and it happened more than once though. Not just that. But I was having lunch with a friend who was crunchy, and they're like, "Oh, does your kid normally eat that many vegetables?" Like, when would you ever feel shame over giving your kid a platter of vegetables?
I think
But
you're
there
gonna have to
wasn't
explain that one. I
enough
don't get
fat. There wasn't
Ah.
protein. Like I didn't have the truly balanced. I don't know.
But not the food
You were doing
pyramid, because that's
something
not right.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But just feeling that shame that like, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing enough. And I thought I was doing it right. I don't know. So just so many moments of feeling like a failure when I really was trying my best kind of fueled this desire to bring light to the comedy life.
So let's talk about that, because we've been talking about crunchy kind of earnestly.
Mm-hmm.
Your channel really gets at the comedy of this exact thing you're talking about. The kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Overzealous.
The absurdity of
snobbishness
it.
kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
of the crunchy lifestyle. So talk, for people who may not have seen your content, about how that play, that you have some essential crunchiness, but the channel is really more of a play on this sort of extreme version of crunchiness.
Well, and half the time it's actually what has happened in my life. And then I'm like, oh, this is hilarious.
Dial it up a little bit.
We need to
Yeah.
dial it up. And so yeah, like for example, something like crunchy or mom coming over. Then I rush around the house and I'm like, oh, gotta pull out my breast milk soap. Oh, gotta put this wooden toy where it can be seen, and shove this in the very back part of the pantry because it has seed oils, or whatever.
You're just not crunchy enough.
I'm
for
just,
that person.
and I'm always just trying. And it can seem a little just desperate. But then there's also like the aspect where I look at the things that I give my kids. One of our biggest videos, or one that's always a hit, is when my kid is like pulling something out of a stocking or pulling something out of a piñata, and it's not really what you would expect. Instead of
piñata one, tell them what's in the piñata. That's a really funny one.
Oh, yeah.
Jerky,
a cucumber.
Peppers.
A cucumber. Yeah.
We did an Easter egg one of a similar one. And it's just like this
a ball
broccoli.
Broccoli, twine. Think of the possibilities.
What will I ever do with these treasures?
Yeah.
One of the things you capture really well in your videos is the inherent competition that goes on between moms, both in and out, again, of the crunchy lifestyle. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about the humor behind competitive momship. So you touched on it a little bit before the break, and this idea that being a crunchy mom is it's kind of an arms race, right? Like, who can be the crunchiest? It's a competition. And I think that's something we talk about on the podcast constantly, that to be good at something is only as good until someone else comes over and is better at it. And whether it's like some kid in France is eating fish at midnight and never complaining, and your idiot kids can't even, make it through dinner, whatever it is, talk a little bit about that kind of, why are we competing over this?
Wouldn't you say it's like a race to who can feel the least shamed?
Maybe.
Or the least amount of shame. Like, well, I don't feel as much shame as she does, because at least in that sense, at least from the comedy standpoint.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird because you just want to do the best by your kid.
I would actually think too that more crunchy moms, I guess, are more in defense of what they're doing rather than active judgment or anything like that either, because I think the soap situation that we talked about earlier is actually an exception to the rule. I don't think you actually run into that very often. Maybe I'm wrong. It's definitely the perception of the crunchy mom that she's just going around judging
she's in your
everybody,
saying, why would you ever put this toxic thing on your child's hair or whatever, right? I mean, we talk about this all the time, that motherhood is inherently a classic high stakes, low control operation. So the stakes are extremely high. You're in charge of how someone else's life and health and path forward turns out. But there's so many things you can't control about their life and the kid who might be bullying them at school, or whether or not another driver is going to veer into your lane, or whether or not, the food that they eat is as healthy as it should be. And I think that we work a lot on trying to find the kind of fat part of the bell curve for people, in terms of, here's a lot of information, and then where you choose to fall. And I tend to be a person who falls a little bit on the, I want us to, I don't have a lot of time, maybe, and maybe this sounds terrible, like I don't have time to feed my children healthy food, but I am going to lean into like a certain kind of joyfulness that works for us and maybe not worry as much about what the clothes are made of. Like that's a choice that I make. But it does sometimes, I think for all motherhood, there's a feeling of your actions are judging me. And it's like, well, what if your actions are just your actions? That's what
Sure.
you choose to do in your household.
Yeah.
And my pinata that's full, I realize your pinata is not actually full of beets, but you know, my pinata full of candy and your pinata full of something else can just both be pinatas in the world. Like
Yeah.
maybe your lifestyle is not an indictment of my choices. And I think
Yeah.
But,
that's
I
where we
mean,
kind of get caught up.
let's be honest, though. We all know what party we'd rather go to.
Well,
Here I
I'm
am
just
thinking the one with the beets.
yes, you're
The
like the beet party
candy.
sounds amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it gets tricky though when I have made decisions for my family, such as we don't eat food dyes. So
Mhm.
then we go to a party that has a pinata with food dye candy,
Mm.
and I'm like, yeah, don't get that, kids. We're not getting that. We're not, because I've seen how one of my children, really just one of them, is truly affected by food dyes, and it's not worth it to me to deal with the aftermath of what it does to him. And I'm not going to let one kid have it and the other kid not, you know?
Right.
So to me, it feels like it's hard to not seem like I am being judgy whenever we've made a stance for our family that's then we're constantly confronted with that,
Right.
you know. And if
Right.
you're like, well, it's just this once. Well, I've been to 5 birthday parties this month, so it's really not just this once, it's all
Right.
the time, you know.
Right.
Emily, why are you showering the ground with your homemade caramels? Don't understand.
Well, and I think that this is an ongoing, we talk a lot about it with extended families. Like people have different rules, people have really different lifestyles, and then somehow we have to live in community with each other. So,
Sure.
you know, when we go to, let's say, a relative's house who has, you know, we walk in and it's all kids on iPads all the time. And we're like,
Mhm.
well, we'd prefer that the kids were outdoors and playing. Like, you try to sort of make adjustments and maybe sometimes, I mean, food dyes is a different thing because it's an ingestible. I don't know, it feels different than like, well, maybe we relax something here or we pick up something here. But I do think in general, we often say you're trying to get your kids ready for the world
Sure.
and at the same time move the world a little closer to your kids, you know, whether
Yeah.
that's a kid with special needs or a kid with food allergies or food sensitivities, and walking that line of we want to kind of exist in community with other people, but we can't kind of control other people's choices. So I guess
Yeah.
that's something that you're just dealing with on a constant basis.
Yes, and we are very relaxed about, I mean, like going to someone's house for food. Well, a lot of times it's not really something that I would prefer, even if it doesn't have dyes or something, but we're gonna eat it,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know. Or if they're all the kids are watching a movie in the room, I'm not gonna be like, no, we're not gonna do that. We watch our movies on Friday nights, children. That's our only
Mhm.
screen time. You know, like
Right.
you have to hold your convictions, but then also be willing to be flexible. What I always tell other moms is, what is the rule in your home?
Mhm.
And then when you're doing something outside of your home, that's the exception to the rule, and it's okay. But
Yeah.
focus on what is the rule in your home and it'll be fine. And I think that goes for not just food, but yeah, entertainment and family culture and all the, you know, all that good stuff.
And how does it work in terms of co-parenting and figuring out, have your rules kind of come together over the course of raising your kids and kind of merge? Because I mean, even I married a foreigner from Texas, and being a New Yorker, I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? We don't do that, you know? And I remember like lots of conversations about kids playing football and, you know, things that me as my like liberal Northeasterner self have feelings about. And my husband just looks at me like, what? That's not a thing. Kids not playing football. That's not a thing, you know? And so how do you deal with the sort of cultural or parental philosophies when they don't line up?
Well, we were married for quite a while before we had children. And I think
See,
that
that's
was
different. We were married for
Yeah.
8 months before we had children.
Oh, wow.
So we had to
No,
really
we-
figure it
Quick.
out
You
on
had
the
to figure it
fly.
out.
What was
We
it,
had to
6,
figure it out on
7
the
years
fly.
for us?
Almost 8. Yeah.
Oh, 8. Okay,
8 years. So just figuring out who we are and how we fit together and how we can communicate in those early years without that stress of a child. That probably helped
Yeah.
ease the transition.
But we also, like, over our early marriage, I mean, we lived in different countries together. We had 15 different jobs. We were just going all over the place, all over the country, all over the world. And so we got to know each other very well. And,
and seeing a variety of children.
mhm.
We sort of made a lot of our decisions based on, oh, I really like how that family has turned out. I love what they're doing. Just seeing different cultures and different decisions. Yeah, it really influenced our decision. And I think we just made that together. But like, I went on a trip and Jason took my kids to a gas station and got them pizza. I would never do that. But
Right.
hey, it's dad time. Like, whatever, they're going to be fine. They've got a great gut microbiome. It's going to come right out here in a day. It'll be okay.
But at the same time, I don't do anything like crazy. Like, I'm on board. I'm on board with because mostly it's been a gradual process too. And we've been learning a lot of this stuff together. I am more skeptical about certain things than you tend to be in terms of the crunchy stuff. Example, red light therapy, that kind of thing.
So if somebody's listening and they are thinking the crunchy lifestyle might be for me, I am crunchy curious.
I really built it up to sound something so lovely.
Yes, you're like, I want those beet pinatas. Whatever's going on, I want in. How do you start on the crunchy journey? Like, how do you go from a person who's never thought of the word tincture or food dye before? Where do people start?
I actually have a book.
Okay.
It's a beginner's guide and it's really comedic and light. Like I've said, that space can be so heavy and it's hard to filter through. And some of it is a little hokey at times, I will say. I mean,
the book or just crunchy lifestyle?
The crunchy lifestyle, like with the influence of social media, I guess I should say. You just have to be careful because so there is some filtering, but I think you have to look at the basics. And in my book, I go through like the 5 basics of being crunchy. So like, look at your food, look at your water, look at your air quality, very actionable steps, easy steps that people can take to clean up different areas of their life. And I say in my book over and over that crunchy is a spectrum. So we're all at different points and that's okay. You can only do what you can do. And as long as you're trying your best, that's enough.
And you mentioned social media, and I mean, we're all social media creators here, so we love social media. We heart social media. But I do think that social media has driven a lot of the mom conversations into some really polarizing places. And that, the conversation becomes like, I'm the don't give a blank mom, and I'm the crunchy mom, and I'm the, fitness mom, or that you have to kind of commit to some lifestyle and it has to be your whole aesthetic. And then you're kind of naturally, I mean, people have made funny videos about like literally moms showing up at playgrounds and like the rumble that goes on between the different moms. But it is possible to incorporate elements of, like you said, you look around and you say, hey, I really like what these people are doing. I really like to see, I think I love to see that their kids are always playing outside, maybe instead of being on screens. Or you can look at elements of people's life choices and say, oh, I want to incorporate pieces of that without it having to become a kind of overarching identity that you're then kind of ride or die for, I guess.
Right. And it's actually, that's been sort of a struggle with creating this content is now I am the crunchy mom.
Right.
And I was telling Jason that like nobody talks to me about anything else. If somebody's going to start a conversation, it's about my crunchy content, whatever, and that isn't who I am. That's not like my only defining, like you were saying. At the end of the day, as moms, we all love our children.
Right.
And or we love them most of the time anyway.
Sure. At least 65 to 75% of the time.
So I think that needs to be the most important thing. That's the driving force behind motherhood. So I totally agree with you. And yeah, I think you can pick and choose, kind of a cafeteria style motherhood.
Do people police you at all in terms of like if you're shopping or like people have their eye, you being the crunchy mom and the crunchy parents, do you feel that pressure of like, I can't remember, what's the guy who wrote Omnivore's Dilemma? Michael Pollan talks about being in the store and a sort of fan or someone walks up to him and is like, you're Michael Pollan and oh, you're into healthy eating. And then he had like Fruity Pebbles in his cart because his kid wanted them. And, he's like, no, they're going to see me with the Fruity Pebbles.
That's like daily for
I
you.
totally feel that, except that I usually am making really very crunchy choices. So like at the grocery store, they're not going to catch me doing that.
Gotcha.
But
they're not going to catch you out with
They're
Fruity
not going to
Pebbles.
catch me. Except I sometimes go grocery shopping for Jason's grandmother. She wants everything totally convenience that she can just pop in the microwave. And when I go shopping for her, I'm just like, please no.
You wear a wig and glasses.
No.
You're like, I cannot be recognized.
No. While we haven't been to McDonald's much, we have visited Culver's quite frequently. I don't know if you have that chain. It's a fast food chain.
They have Culver's. I've been to a Culver's, but for the northerners or the people who don't know, Culver's is a fast food chain.
It's just fast food. Yeah.
What is there?
So,
they have a specialty at Culver's.
Custard.
Custard.
The frozen custard.
I should have just leaned in. I know my Culver's. It's frozen custard at Culver's.
So good.
And I mean, we've been, I don't know,
75 times.
No, but but every single time we go, I get recognized. And then someone wants a picture with me. And it's like, I'm clearly in a Culver's. Yeah. One of them was a Culver's worker and they're like wearing their Culver's apron. It's like, there's no way I can hide this. I'm at Culver's.
Sorry, guys. I'm at Culver's.
Yeah.
I am talking to Emily and Jason Morrow of Really Very Crunchy, and we'll be right back. So let's talk a bit about the podcast and how you came to do a podcast and what kind of things you're talking about on the podcast.
Well, we're actually just 32 episodes in.
It's a new venture.
Yeah, and so far, I mean, it's actually one of the best, my favorite things we do every week because it's just actually, so far, it's just me and Emily.
Yep.
We've entertained the idea of having guests eventually, but every week it's she and I just sit down and talk to each other. We kind of get an idea, topic, and just talk, and it's almost like couple therapy.
Yeah, it feels. I keep telling everybody, like, if you're struggling in your marriage, just start a podcast.
Start a podcast. Yeah.
Don't start a podcast about your spouse who's not around, because I have to say that hasn't gone amazing for me sometimes. Sometimes I just talk about Amy famously talked about her husband getting her a pajamagram for Christmas, which was clearly like a last minute, no thought gift. And he still gets berated by people in his life. And they're like, a pajamagram? Like, what kind of monster gets a pajamagram? So you're there to rebut, and our husbands do not have that opportunity. And sometimes they take some serious fire on the podcast.
Well, Jason still does take it. Like, I tell stories on him. There's this one story. I was a tired first time mom. My baby was an infant.
You're going to introduce this to a new audience? Seriously?
The people have to know. They have to know, Jason.
I was taking a nap or something. I mean, I was just so tired. Those like newborn days. It's so hard. And Jason
I do know. It's really hard. Yeah.
And decided to wake me by flicking me in the forehead over and over.
Not that hard.
And yet he lives still. I need to know more because I'm confused why he's still alive.
Oh, but what? Like anytime I think about that story, I still am.
It seemed right at the time. I don't know.
Flicking me in the forehead.
Yeah.
I have a newborn. I'm tired. couldn't just rub my foot or,
Maybe I tried that first and it
Did you
wasn't
No.
working.
whisper, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I thought you'd be in such a deep sleep, but
So
you had to get up.
there are many, many stories like that he can't refute. I mean, he's
No.
there.
He did it. He was
I
the
don't-
flicker.
My brain was just not working that day, I guess, and I have not lived it down.
No, I mean, frankly, no offense, nor should you. That's
No,
that's a
I understand.
crime.
I get it. No,
We,
I wear that. I have a jacket I wear in the winters that I flick my wife
I
in the
flicked
forehead.
my wife. It's like a scarlet F, the flicker.
Yeah, a
yes,
scarlet
you've done
F.
the terrible thing. We have a series of podcasts called Husband Crimes where people just report on the crimes their husbands have committed.
That's
And we'll
great.
invite you to tell this freaking story next time because it's so relatable. And I love, Jason, the way you're like, I wasn't because whenever we talk about husband crimes, my husband, and now he's just like, why am I getting brought up again? I'm not in this. He's like, I'm not even crunchy. Leave me out of this. But he famously, for an early Christmas, as people were exchanging beautiful, whatever, jewelry for their wives and thoughtful gifts, gave me a diaper bag. And I was like, what kind of you're a horrible person. I was so mad at him. And then I kind of walked him through, like, do you see how this makes me feel? Like, just, you only see me as like a baby carrot. Like, why? And then I could see the light kind of come on beyond his eyes. Like, okay, yeah. Now that you say it in that really mean way loudly into my face, I can see where that was a wrong choice.
He's not alone, though. Jason gave me like a little tiny puffball of a cactus, like so sharp. And it was like the ugliest little cactus you could ever find for Valentine's Day.
If you guys need me to leave, I could just
Almost.
I could
Yeah,
step
Jason,
out.
if you could step out for a
I can
few
go get a
minutes.
snack.
We're just going to take baseball bats out.
You want some
now.
Culvers? I'll be back.
Hammer our spouses. One of the stories you talk about on the podcast that very much amused me because it's an ongoing fight in our family is about the way your families play board games differently.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I was like, wow, this is a fight we've had before.
Well, yeah. I mean, my family, my mom and I don't know, not long ago we were playing Yahtzee. That's one that you roll the dice, right? And you try to get,
Confuse Yahtzee and Boggle.
Yeah, Boggle has
Still shuffling around little blocks, but yeah.
Yeah.
the Yahtzee. You're trying to get strings of numbers,
Trying to get all
dice.
fives or all threes or
Mhm. And so, say I have like 4 threes and I need one more, but my time is up, my turn is up. She'd be like, "Oh, just take one more roll. Just do it. You got it."
Of course.
And,
you can do it, Emily.
And that's
I
great
believe
for
you.
a 4-year-old.
Yeah, so that's how we play. We're like, "Oh,
But
you
you're
got
talking
it."
about
Just like-
as an adult, you're still playing this way.
yeah, I was still playing this way. And we want to see the other person win.
That's
we
not
take
the point
joy
of a game.
in seeing
You take
their
joy in
victory.
winning a game. That's
Jason's family is so cutthroat. Like his
Yeah.
family's love language is picking on you.
And roundly
which is
defeating
independent
you
of
in
wanting to
games.
win.
If
I mean,
you
come on.
leave crying, then they really let you know that
we've
they
done our
love
job.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, you've done your job.
You're accepted.
So basically, every member of his family has made me cry at some point.
In a
Yeah.
board game,
Mhm.
even. Yeah. Not just outside of board games.
And it's not that I'm particularly tender or sensitive. They are just vicious.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
once had a Trivial Pursuit game with my husband's family that ended with no one speaking to each other for like a month. And it was the clue that broke everyone was I believe women versus men, and the clue was about MSG. What is the crystalline salt that is used in flavoring in some meals? And it was MSG. And my husband and his brother, who are scientists, then went on a research rampage to prove that MSG is not, in fact, a crystalline salt. And we had to have a whole debate about whether or not the card, what it says on the
Yeah,
card.
are you
rules
winning by
Trivial
what
Pursuit,
it says on
people.
the card or
We
what's
We don't
true?
do our
Yeah.
own research in Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah.
It's what it says on the card.
Mhm.
And for months, they were sending us articles about how it is clearly a monosodium. It is not a crystalline salt. How could you be mono? And I was like, you people really need to get a hobby.
Wow.
But I love the kinds of discussions. Talk about some of the other things you talk about in the podcast, because it's just that experience in listening, whether or not you happen to identify as crunchy. This is what marriage and parenthood is like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. A lot of times we talk about just navigating relationships, like you
Mhm.
said. And when you're crunchy, there is an extra layer of awkward.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's so varied.
Yep.
We seriously half the time don't even know what we're going to talk about. And then we go in and we talk about, personality types. And
I think one of my favorite ones is the most recent one where we talked about the jobs that we've had in the past and just actually
Mhm.
talking about how our lives were different growing up and the different jobs we had and just the ridiculousness of it. And I don't know, we actually learn a lot more about each other doing that too. But
a lot of people say they just feel like they're hanging out with friends and
Yep.
they're not talking, but they're just listening. And it's a fun conversation that they love to just listen in on.
But the aim is definitely to be lighthearted and to have fun with it. It's not ever too serious. We've had a couple of serious episodes.
We did one about conspiracy theories.
Oh, that was fun.
Because for some reason now conspiracy theories are like married to the crunchy life,
Yeah.
and
there's
not
a Venn diagram.
Doesn't have to be.
Yes. And so we like went through all these conspiracy theories and rated from 1 to 10 how believable they could be. And I learned a lot. Like, I had no idea that there are people out there who believe there is a world within our world. There's like another world
accessed at the polls.
The polls.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be available for that. I don't like long trips. I'll just let those people live their own world. We were recently talking about space travel, and I'm like, I'm good. I got enough problems on Earth. I don't need to go encounter other people. I don't know. I'm good. I don't need to encounter the people who live at the poles in the other world. I hope they're happy. I hope they're having a great time.
That's about how I feel with all of it. I'm just like, I don't really care. I'm just making it. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm making it.
Yeah.
I can look at my life and say, this is what is true here right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then I also think I've never met anyone organized enough to be pulling this stuff off. I've worked in government jobs, every sort of different job, waitressing. I just feel like I've never met anyone who could pull off a conspiracy theory. People are kind of dumb and disorganized in general. I don't really believe anyone's up to a second thing.
Sure.
They're barely doing the first thing, most people.
Yeah. I agree with that.
mean, we have been to like town hall meetings where they're discussing whether or not to buy a certain brand for police cars, and like the amount of thought that goes on to every little thing. The discussion, the
they're
debates.
Conspiring to get a Dodge Charger.
It was just like, how can we
Really want more horsepower.
I agree with you.
Don't leave us with the Crown Vics.
And then talk a little bit for people who might not be familiar about, we talked a little bit about your other content, but what are people going to find at Really Very Crunchy?
Yeah, it's mostly comedy, lighthearted.
Yes.
So if you like to laugh.
That's important to underline, because I feel like we've been talking about crunchiness a little seriously, but Emily and Jace's content is extremely funny.
And you don't have to be crunchy to enjoy it.
Yes.
Probably everybody who is, listening to podcasts or watching reels on social media knows what a crunchy mom is. Yeah, so just knowing someone who's crunchy or being a little bit crunchy yourself, like anybody can enjoy my content. And then I also have a book and a children's book and the podcast.
The podcast, yeah.
So, and it's all pretty comedic.
And we're actually going on tour in February. It's only like 5 shows, but that's on our website. But yeah, we don't.
You actually work with them, 1,000 Hours Outside.
Yes, another
we're-
Atlas podcast. So you're going on tour with 1,000 Hours Outside. So to be 1,000 Hours Outside and Really Very Crunchy on
Each
tour
show
together.
is 1,000 hours.
Yeah,
long.
that's going to be amazing. And it's all outside in the wintertime. You're going to love it.
1,000
It's gonna be
seconds.
huge.
Yeah, 1,000 seconds inside.
There you go. So we've talked a lot about it, but just tell our audience where they can find you and find all of your content.
We have made it super easy for people.
Good.
Really Very Crunchy. Just search Really Very Crunchy, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram,
Website,
wherever you want. We have a website, reallyverycrunchy.com. My book is called Really Very Crunchy.
Podcast is called
The Really Very Crunchy podcast.
There you go. I love it when people make it easy. Well, Jason and Emily, it was so much fun talking to you today. We will link to Really Very Crunchy, but basically you don't need the link. It's Really Very Crunchy, people. You've got it already. Thanks so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. This was fun.
Thank you.